Hi, everybody. I'm Jake Sherman. I'm one of the founders of Punchbowl News. Thank you so much for joining us here in Milwaukee. Beautiful Milwaukee, great weather, not too hot. Thank you for joining us in our lunchtime conversation focused on the key takeaways from one of my favorite things of Punchbowl News, the Canvas, which is our poll of senior Capitol Hill aides and K Street influencers in partnership with LSG. I hope you're enjoying the Punchbowl News HQ in Milwaukee. I had nothing to do with any of this, but I'll take credit. It looks great. If you haven't had a chance, we encourage you to grab a coffee at the GM Coffee Bar or get a cocktail at the Sazerac Bar as we dive into this great conversation. As always, please share this conversation on social media, Punchbowl News on every platform you can imagine. And I'd like to welcome Philip Morris to the stage. Philip is a partner at LSG, and we're going to dive into all the data in the Canvas. Okay, let's get into it. So the Canvas, we started at the beginning of Punchbowl News, a way to survey the attitudes, the feelings, the policy preferences of key decision makers in DC. Give us a brief understanding how you've been conducting the Canvas survey at the RNC. This is I'll mention this is Punchbowl News' first convention, and it's also obviously the first time we've done the Canvas at the convention because it's our first convention. So tell us how you're doing that.
Sure, happy to. So we typically survey these audiences, our Capitol Hill survey and our K Street one separately. And what's been exciting for the convention, we're surveying this audience as a whole simultaneously right after convention speeches conclude. So we're keeping folks up very late at night. The survey, I think, last night...
They're up anyway. I'm not, but they are.
The survey last night, I believe, went out around somewhere around 11 p.m. Eastern. And what's remarkable is that in this short, quick flash poll that we're doing, and this is the first evening that we have run this, we had 179 responses come in between 11 p.m. and early this morning.
That's insanity.
So folks are excited to make their voice heard, and I'm looking forward to sharing some of the results that we have.
So before we get too deep into the details, let's just get in. What have been some of the most interesting findings so far?
So I'm going to start by just saying I think broadly the thing that's been the most remarkable about the Canvas, putting the conventions aside, and I think that what comes out of this, the same will hold true. The Canvas has been remarkably predictive.
Agreed.
And that's one of the things that we've hoped for as we were surveying not just anyone on Capitol Hill, not just anyone on K Street, but really the folks who drive and impact decisions that are made. The most senior staffers on the Hill. I think I'm always proud we cite that the largest role by participation in our survey on the Hill is chiefs of staff. When we talk about K Street, very similarly, we're only surveying the most senior folks. And I think of the last big election cycle that we looked at, 2022 in the midterms, we had been polling both of these audiences on what they expected the outcome to be in some of the hottest, most contested Senate races. What was stunning was the Capitol Hill survey, 9 of the 9 top Senate races they accurately projected the outcome of. On K Street, 8 of the 9 most contested Senate races they got correct. So I think the Canvas has proven, and legislatively, I mean, as you would expect, they've been spot on about what is and isn't going to move and gain momentum on the Hill. So I think now that we're in this election cycle, it will be very fun. We've already been doing a lot of polling about how these audiences view what's going to happen as we get closer and closer to November. And I think some of what has happened is going to happen this week will certainly play a role in that.
So we are gathered here just days after an attempt on former President Donald Trump's life. What has been the general sense about how that will impact? And it was a horrible incident, but how will it impact? Is it galvanizing Republicans? Is it what has been the political impact of that incident?
Yeah, so I think it remains to be seen. I think one of the questions that we had asked in our survey was around the unity within the Republican Party. And I think what's funny is when you go back the last few months to the surveys that we've conducted among Capitol Hill and K Street, there was a lot of consensus around there being unity in the Democratic Party and more division in the Republican Party. And what a difference a week or two makes, where you look at after, obviously, first the debate and then the assassination attempt, and you now see exactly the opposite, where in our survey, almost 80% say that they believe the Republican Party is unified at this convention. And that holds true among Democratic spectators of the convention as well as Republican ones in our survey. And I think we obviously didn't ask the same about the Democratic Party, but we'll certainly be looking at that as we look ahead to next month. And I think we're going to see a market shift there. So again, what a difference time makes. We're seeing exactly the opposite that we saw on these types of questions just a couple months ago.
Let's talk about J.D. Vance, who is the vice presidential nominee, senator from Ohio. We've covered him for about 2 years. What is the Canvass community saying about how he impacts the ticket?
Well, I want to start by saying the Canvass community, I think, supports your decision not to use periods for
Yeah,
JD.
I'll talk about this for a second. I said on Twitter we were going to put periods because it stands for James David, so periods usually would separate those two letters. But he let it be known to me that he is JD without periods. So AP style is within reason. We're supposed to let people be called what they want to be called. So we will call him JD sans periods.
I only joke because my team, as they were preparing the survey for the Canvass respondents, had the periods when Jake sent out the tweet, and about 6 minutes later said, no, remove all the periods before we go live. But some interesting findings around the VP pick. I think first, we asked respondents in our survey whether they believe Vance is the best option to help Donald Trump win in this election. And overwhelmingly, 80% said that they do not believe that he's the best pick that he could have made to be his running mate. I think then when we asked what type of impact folks expect that he will have on the outcome of this election, 70% say that they think he will have none or little impact on the outcome of the election. And so I think when you saw, certainly in some of the coverage around the speeches yesterday, the Vance pick was certainly not a let's broaden the tent and bring more folks into the fold. And I think that that's why, as in the months leading up to this pick, when we were asking Canvass respondents who they thought was going to be picked, a name we kept seeing rise to the top was certainly Tim Scott as someone who maybe could broaden that tent somewhat. But I think that folks are obviously clearly a little bit disappointed in terms of what impact Vance can potentially have on the race, given he is so closely aligned with the president, the former president, in his positions.
Yeah, I'll say. I think the general consensus that we get here, two observations from being here, I think, and they kind of line up with what the Canvass has found. Number one, it seems like of all the Republican conventions we've been to and covered, and Ann and I've covered a bunch together, three together, I guess. The party is more unified and more confident in this one, I think, than any other time since we've been covering politics, number one. And number two, the reason, I don't know about the reason, you can't say what's in somebody's head, but you don't pick J.D. Vance unless you think you're going to win, right? It doesn't do anything to expand the tent. He, in fact, makes some people nervous. So I think that is true. Now, we saw several Trump rivals yesterday who are now staunch supporters. Nikki Haley, who once said she would not kiss the ring, certainly kissed the ring. Marco Rubio, who was a finalist, at least if you believe what the campaign says, to be vice president. Ted Cruz and many others throughout the weekend. Tom Emmer yesterday, who Trump ruined his bid to be speaker. How do you think, and how do our respondents think that those speeches landed? And to the extent the party needs to be more unified, are they getting more unified with those speeches?
Yeah, so we asked respondents in our survey whether they believe that the RNC has been effective or ineffective so far in appealing to moderate Republicans and Nikki Haley primary voters that we know she worked hard yesterday to try to sort of bring into the fold. What we see is that a plurality, 47%, almost half, say that they think that the RNC has been ineffective in bringing those voters into the fold. In comparison, 38% say that they think they've been effective. So I think overall, the grade for the effort that was made last night was obviously not a good one, that more could have or should have been done. But we had also asked, of those former rivals who spoke, who did the best job of trying to bring some of those moderate voters into the fold? And overwhelmingly, Nikki Haley got the highest praise for the efforts that she made to try to bring some of those voters into the fold, much more so than others that we had also asked in the survey, namely DeSantis, Rubio, Ramaswamy, Cruz, and Carson.
Yeah, I mean, Nikki Haley, I think that makes sense, represents a completely different kind of pocket of the Republican Party than does Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has actually been pretty public in saying he does not want to reach out to those voters, and he doesn't care if they vote for him. I think that's probably not true, but the election is now 4 months away. I think 115 or 14 days, and quite a tense period, I'd say, in American politics. Now, let me put it to you this way. Are our respondents saying they think the party is unified? I mean, how do they view the mood inside the Republican Party, and if there's anything that the party could do to bring the party more together?
So I think they think there's unity in that we see overwhelmingly 80% are saying that the party feels unified at this convention. But I think the difference is they feel unified around Donald Trump as the nominee in a way that in our surveys leading up to this, you had a majority of K-Streeters and those on Capitol Hill saying that they disagree Trump is the best option to win in November. And I think that now where we are, they have coalesced around him in a way that I don't think anyone would have expected. And I think certainly the assassination attempt has obviously helped drive some of that. I think from a policy standpoint, that's where there are still some divisions. I mean, Nikki Haley, very intentionally did not bring up some of those kind of lines in the sand around Ukraine when she spoke during her speech last night. And I think that clearly there are fences that have not been mended in terms of some of the establishment that has very different views from the former president, particularly around foreign policy. I think you saw McConnell got booed resoundingly
yes.
at the convention. And so I don't think that has quite been resolved, and I think that that's where there isn't necessarily unity around some of those policy positions. But I think as far as Donald Trump being the nominee, the party's been as unified as it's been this entire election.
And I think, and Andrew DiSterio, our terrific Senate reporter, is here. Not speaking at this convention includes Mitch McConnell and John Thune, and I believe John Cornyn, three of the either leaders, contenders to be leaders. So behind, I think, all of this unity, there are still, as you indicate, big fractures in the party, not only in the presidential race, but also in the governing wing of the GOP as well. Philip, unfortunately, we're all out of time. Thanks so much for joining me to frame up what our Canvass participants are telling us so far during this Republican convention. We're going to be doing this again at the Democratic convention and going forward this week, and I guess that's 3 weeks from now. It was nice when it was like one convention, week off, one convention, but I don't plan these, I just attend. For all of you joining us, a reminder, at 2 p.m. today, we're hosting an ice cream social in partnership with Snap, and that will be followed by a pop-up conversation with August Pfluger of Texas, Republican of Texas, where we'll talk about the RNC convention, state of the race, and all things energy at 3:30 in partnership with our presenting sponsor, Exxon. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, and enjoy all the food and all the camaraderie.